My grandfather was decided he would come out to the gold rush in the Klondike. And he got as far as Victoria, and from where he was going to take a boat up to Skagway, I guess. Anyway, he was out of money. He ran out of money, so he never got out of Victoria. And he got a job on a survey crew, and I guess he liked the work.
When he first became a surveyor, he bought a camera, and he started keeping a diary, and he got a Chinook dictionary so he could speak the language with the people. So obviously he felt that the work he was doing was going to provide him with this opportunity to do some unique things.
Dog Creek, Upper Arrow Lake, 6 a.m. Miserable wet outside. It's roll out, tumble out, all aboard for breakfast, and off we make for work. The country is terribly rough and densely timbered. I stand at the transit with the ring of the axes ahead. Mosquitoes bad, sandflies worse, bulldogs atrocious.
In 1912, the government started a type of surveying project called triangulation surveying, and it was a way of surveying an area quickly and yet accurately at the same time. So in 1912, he'd started this project beginning at Fort St. James and working north, 1913 even further north, and then in 1914 to go up to the Finley River to the headwaters of the Finley and the three large lakes up there.
You see, when Swannell arrived here, try to imagine this. There was no motels, hotels, or anything. The men's house here was extremely important as a resident to stay in. With the discovery of the gold and of course there was extreme need to get the country surveyed, this would be the only place that they could stay other than in tents.
Frank used a transit and sometimes had to climb the same mountain 3 times with this transit because the 2 times the previous day or whatever it was too foggy to see anything. And as rough as it was with all the mountainous country, a lot of his points were within inches.
The mapping that Swannell did was the first accurate maps of the area, so people could use that for developing transportation routes, for looking at where the waterways were going.
July 21st. Arrive at Fort Graham, 10 a.m. Ross, the factor, is downriver, and many Sekani are camped here. 7 are sick, 5 already dead. Disease unknown, probably largely starvation. Although they can see food on the shelves, they are too honest to break in and are amazed that I dare break the flimsy lock and serve them out supplies.
So they could see food there, and yet they wouldn't do anything about it because they were honest enough that and so they couldn't believe that Swannell would break into the store and give them food from there with the idea that he was going to pay it back to the trader later on. You know, it's hard to believe that they would risk starvation when there is food there, but I guess, you know, that the power of the Hudson Bay Company and the honesty that they wouldn't take something that wasn't theirs.
Dropped down the bad water to the top of the main cascade on the line and nearly swamped. Strike rocks twice in the rapids below. George is dragged into the river, but Jimmy drags him out, reeling him in like a fish. To Jimmy belongs all credit for getting us safely down the Finley.
Once they left Fort Graham in July, I think they saw some trappers in early August, and that was about it. So they went up the Finley, got almost up to Two Daddy Lake and ran out of time. And then on their way down, they were coming through one of the canyons, and there Swannell saw a stick with a red flag sticking out into the river. So he knew that meant something.
There's a newspaper wadded up, and he opens it up and it says, "War declared." And he of course had no communication with the outside, so it took him by surprise considerably. And he had to pop out of the trench to do his sights and using his transit. So he developed a system where he would, when there was a bit of a lull in the shelling, he'd jump out and get as many fixes as possible and jump back in.
Half day in trenches surveying Dragoon Alley. Get deliberately sniped at several times. Now expert at bobbing up and reading prismatic like greased lightning. Under cover, I get dial approximate bearing, then Baxter holds bayonet above parapet ahead and I bob up and clamp exact bearing. In reserve trenches until 3 p.m., then moved forward. Crowded together in communicating trench between first and second line and, of course, get shelled. I got struck on top of head with spent shrapnel bullet. Worst sight of all in the half-light, blown to pieces sandbags and odds and ends of humanity, stumbling along, catching one's feet in the dead men's accoutrements.
He was using Citroën half-track vehicles, and my grandfather went ahead and mapped their route that started in Alberta and was trying to go across the Rockies in an area that had never been explored before.
He thought that it was going to be a scientific expedition. Badeau was billing it as a scientific expedition. But once they got out in the field, he pretty quickly realized that the scientific work meant nothing to him, and if whatever happened, happened, and he wasn't too concerned about it.
They did not work in the mud. So that was the end of that.
The lasting importance of Swannell is his journals and his photographs. Altogether, his collection is about 5,000 photographs.
And along with the diaries and the sketches and the maps, of course, he's recorded quite a bit of history.